Locked On Podcast Network and Bet Online present NFL Key Predictions. The local team experts of Locked On NFL give you the inside knowledge on the biggest games of the week and betting advice from the field's leading experts. You are Locked On NFL Key Predictions.
Hey everyone, and welcome into NFL Key Predictions. I'm Jordan Black. We have 3 divisional games on tap for you in Week 17, with all 5 games holding playoff implications. Whether they're looking to punch a playoff ticket or play late season spoiler, we are in for an exciting slate this weekend. We kick things off in New England, where in spite of losing their last 2 contests, the Patriots find themselves in a position to steal a playoff berth away from division rival Miami as the season winds down. Having lost to the Dolphins earlier in the season, this is a must-win contest for Mac Jones and New England. Now, the Dolphins, on the other hand, are finding themselves in bittersweet waters. While a win would put them in prime position to clinch a playoff berth, they'll have to do so without Tua Tagovailoa, who will miss the rest of the season with serious concussion concerns. Kyle Krabs from Locked On Fins joins Mike Diabati from Locked On Patriots to preview this AFC East contest.
First game of the calendar year in 2023, the 8-7 Dolphins, the 7-8 Patriots, all facing the potential of their playoff lives flashing before their eyes in this one, Kyle. Obviously, we've talked big storylines. We have talked key matchups in this, but ultimately there will be a winner or there will be a loser unless there's a tie, folks. I know that's a possibility, but we're kind of gunning on having a definitive winner on this one. Kyle, when you look at this matchup, we know that there are concerns on both sides of the coin, but we also know the potential of both these two teams when they play well. How do you see this one shaking out on Sunday? Is this going to be a win for the Dolphins? Is it going to be a win for the Patriots? Or is it really too close to tell at this point?
Well, I look at a couple of things, and I know I've kind of communicated the pessimism that exists in the Dolphins fan base right now, and I certainly think having to play offense differently than the way that you have aspired to will kind of create a wild card in this matchup, but I really don't like the vibes for Miami going in. This is a young team with a first-year head coach trying to buckle down and stop what is a catastrophic slide from 8-3. And we're facing a situation where New England, they win, they put themselves in a position to winning in Week 18. And there's nothing more terrifying for Dolphins fans than Week 17, than the phrase Week 17 clinching scenario, which is where they find themselves, where if they beat the Patriots and the Jets lose to the Seahawks at 4 o'clock, the Dolphins will clinch the 7th seed. I think about the fact that the Dolphins have won 4 in a row and 5 of their last 6 and 7 of the last 10 in this matchup. And law of averages says to me, I think this matchup being as close as it is, being in Foxborough with the Dolphins having the string of recent success just from a law of averages standpoint, I don't really like the vibes for Miami between how they're playing, the recent trends, the youth situation, the team, the injury situation with the quarterback. It just feels like a lot. And for optimal chaos standpoints, I think I'm probably going to pick the Patriots at home to win this football game. The Dolphins haven't shown me the ability to close a football game in the last month in games that were winnable football games for all of them. They were 1-score games in the fourth quarter, and Miami could not close any of them. So I understand that the Patriots offensively are a little bit different than playing the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, right? I know they don't have that kind of firepower, but if you told me this game was 20-16, one way or the other, I wouldn't be surprised. But until the Dolphins show me that they can win a late season game under the current structure of the team, I'm going to have to see it to believe it. So give me the Patriots 2016 final.
Interesting point that you make in terms of this being a young team that right now is facing a lot of adversity in going into a hostile environment, obviously, and trying to clinch a playoff spot and really, reclaim some of the magic that they had earlier this season, minus their starting quarterback. It's a lot for any team. It's a lot, definitely, for a young team. But I can tell you on the Patriots side of things is whenever you see the Miami Dolphins lining up on the other side, it definitely sends a little bit of a squeamish feeling through the bodies of most Patriots fans because the Dolphins have had the Patriots number as of late. This has not been a winnable game for New England, whether it's in Gillette or whether it's down in Miami. So the Patriots are going to have their work cut out for them. Mac Jones and the New England Patriots absolutely have to move the ball on offense. They cannot do it inconsistently. They cannot do it intermittently. Otherwise, the familiarity that Miami's defenders have will eventually get to the Patriots offense, and it could make things very difficult for New England on Sunday. I know you mentioned earlier guys like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips have had intermittent success lately in terms of rushing the passer and in terms of being able to put pressure on the quarterback, but this is something that New England has had difficulty containing themselves. So that to me is something that if the Patriots can do that, I like their chances of being able to keep their offense on the field and give their defense a little bit of a break. And the wild card in all this, Kyle, is if the Patriots can force any type of defensive points or special teams points. They've been one of the best teams in the league at doing that. They nearly pulled out a comeback that no one thought they could pull off on Saturday against the Cincinnati Bengals. But for a couple of last-minute snafus, this team was well on their way to being able to take it to one of the better teams in the league. So if the Patriots do that and they maintain their cleanliness in the closing moments, I like their to steal a term from what you said. I like the vibes that the Patriots are giving off. Even in the loss on Saturday, you could sense the confidence starting to creep back into this room about the Patriots being able to hang with anybody. So I'm going to go out with a Patriots final score here of 24-21. I think they yield a little bit of points on this, but in the end, I think they're able to take advantage of just enough confusion on the offensive side of Miami to be able to take advantage of it. So I like the Patriots by 3 in this one to win and keep their playoff hopes alive.
The Minnesota Vikings have been the cardiac kids all season long, having played in 11 one-possession games this year. At 12-3, there's still the opportunity to capture that number 1 seed, and the Vikings could do so at the expense of division rival Packers, as well as with some help from around the league, specifically the Eagles. Green Bay took a frustrating journey toward a potential playoff berth, head-scratching play calling, a quarterback with injuries and excuses along the way, and yet slim as the odds may be, Green Bay could still be in the wild card picture with a win and some help from around the NFC. Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings joins Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers for this NFC North battle.
Okay, I've seen this line 3.5. As you said, we don't know who's going to play. We don't know how much they're going to play
right now. And
3.5 on BetOnline as we record this. And the last time I checked, money was pretty evenly split too. So that's an interesting
slightly
factor.
On the Vikings, but yeah, it'll go up and down.
I think this game, as I said, I think it's a game between two teams that are relatively even. How much the Vikings want to care, like I meant to ask you this, but we got a little carried away. Was how much you think the Vikings should care about a game like this?
I'm so torn on this. So on one hand, I get it. Like they are prioritizing health and kind of freshness over the difference between the 2 or the 3 seed, because ultimately for that to come up, the 49ers have to win out, and both the Vikings and 49ers have to see their have to win their wild card games. That's a 4-game parlay for this to even matter.
Right.
So yeah, that and I think that's
we'll see what BetOnline would give us odds on that for.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's like, but if it does matter, that would certainly matter, right? Home field advantage up against San Francisco. That's a tough team. You want to get him to US Bank where it's loud. Brock Purdy, make him play on the road. So I get it. But at the same time, it's like, is that more important than, what if you run everybody to the ground and guys like Harrison Smith or Eric Kendricks or Daniil Hunter that have played like every rep this season? That Colts game, it was like 115 reps. Like it was insane. Or I think 93 was the actual number on defense. 93 reps in a game. That's
unbelievable. That's a game and a half. That's almost 2 games.
It's unbelievable. And so that wear and tear is like, okay, maybe those guys being fresh so we can actually win these playoff games rather than, worrying about where we end up in the standings. I'm super, super torn on it. I think I lean toward where Kevin O'Connell is, where, give him some rest. And he is sort of half playing it. Like they'll play a little, they'll rotate out, trying to get some young guys some run. We're seeing a lot more Brian Asamoah, Sezia Tomo, these draft pick guys that have kind of been on the bench all year, getting a little bit more run. But I think all of that said, I have been taking Vikings overs for weeks and they always hit. So if I'm going to be anything like confident in anything, it's over 47.5, 3.5 points on the road, division. No idea who's going to play. That's one where I'm not going to put any money anywhere on that. I have no idea how that's going to play out, but I'd be surprised if there wasn't a bunch of scoring.
Yeah, the over to me is a lock. I know it's going to be
Yeah.
cold, but I just think
Who
there's
cares?
going to be a lot of scoring. And if you look at it, the Packers against the best defenses they've faced, that's actually when they've been at their best, interestingly. And so, the Cowboys,
This is
they
the
hung
second worst
30 on the
defense in the
Cowboys.
league.
They hung 30 on the Eagles. And even I know Aaron Donald didn't play, but that's still a pretty good Rams defense. And they really, they kneeled at the 1 yard line. They could have sleptwalked to 30 points if they wanted to in that game. So I think there's going to be points. I think the Packers win. I think the Packers cover. And I don't think the Vikings care that much. I think that's part of the deal. And so
Speaking of the Don Draper meme.
Yeah. So a lot more to come. I'm going to be live after the game. Are you going to do a live stream after the game?
I will be live a few hours after the game. I have a conflict, so I'll be
It's fine.
with
Check out Locked On Vikings after the game. Check out Locked On Packers after the game. We always get Vikings fans on our streams. So if you want to come stop by, welcome. We'll have some fun. I had fun with this, Luke.
This is fun. It's all good fun.
I always have fun talking to you.
Banger crossover.
I always have fun on Twitter with you. And so that's part of why I love to do these crossovers. We will talk to you all again very soon.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and soccer, we've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at Bet Online as well. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
What's up?
Oh, I'm just compiling all the top sports scores, news, and odds so I can make the very best picks.
Me too. BetOnline.net.
Get into the action anytime, anywhere at BetOnline.net.
The mere fact that the Steelers are still technically capable of making the playoffs is an achievement in itself. Mike Tomlin and Pittsburgh don't believe in throwing in the terrible towel on any game or season and now have valuable reps under Kenny Pickett's belt. Playoffs or not, the Steelers can also spoil the postseason push for division rival Baltimore as a highlight to their 2022 season. The Ravens, without Lamar Jackson, are battling toward the finish line. It hasn't always been pretty, but much like their division foe, this is not a franchise that gives up easily. A win would further cement their playoff position and could even put them in the conversation for the division title. Christopher Carter from Locked On Steelers and Kevin O'Stryker from Locked On Ravens have the coverage of this AFC North matchup for us.
Kevin, like we said, the last game very much defined by interceptions. 3 interceptions the Ravens had, all coming in plus territory for the Steelers. If the Steelers manage a field goal out of any of those drives, maybe they win that. Maybe they win that game. The Steelers this past week just had 3 interceptions on the Las Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr. I do think this game could come down to who forces whom to be more aggressive early. And I said that last time. And that time, the Ravens got out to an early lead. I think it was 10-0 at one point. And then you saw the desperation from Mitch Trubisky. And I know that's not Kenny Pickett, but still riskier throws over the middle, allowed Roquan Smith to make some plays, allowed Marcus Williams to make some plays. And that led to the advantage that the Ravens were able to establish and kind of win with. This past week, the Steelers' win against the Raiders is the first time they won all year when the other team scored first. And so for me, I think a big part of this isn't just the quarterback play itself, but where this team puts their quarterbacks in position to have to make plays. If you force the Ravens to be aggressive with Huntley or Brown or whoever, even if it's Lamar Jackson coming back from his first game in a while, I think you put the advantage on the Steelers, but vice versa. If Kenny Pickett has to get aggressive and it's not the last drive of the game when you can kind of throw everything out and just go for it, I think that puts the Ravens right back where they were the last time these teams played, and you see the Ravens get another win.
Right, and I think there are 2 ways that teams can be aggressive early. It's the desperation aggressiveness, or it's being aggressive to set a tone. And right. I think the team that sets the tone early, so whether that's Baltimore taking a deep shot to Deshaun Jackson, or the Steelers picking up chunk yards with Pat Freiermuth or Deontay Johnson or whoever sets that tone early That's being aggressive in the first place. But then the response by the other team, like if the Ravens got out to that 10-0 lead again here, and you start to see that desperation again by this time Kenny Pickett, that can lead into those turnovers. And you're right, the Steelers left 12 points on the board in a 2-point loss, each in plus territory, where you're thinking they could really go down and score here and pick up a touchdown or pick up 3 points. And it was interceptions. You got Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, and Marcus Williams each making a big play. They kept the Ravens in the game and ultimately led, and it was a big reason why the Ravens ended up winning. It was the run game and it was the defense. So I think if the Ravens have run success early against the Pittsburgh defense, if you see the Ravens rip off a couple of really big runs, if they can drive down the field on their first or second possession using the ground game, I think that will set a tone. And on the other side of things, they need to, if they do that, get the ball into the end zone from the red zone, because it just seems like when the Ravens don't get that ball in on the first possession of red zone offense, they go like 1 for 4 or 1 for 3 and they leave points on the board. So then if the Steelers respond to that and they say, hey, we're going to go down and score a touchdown, it will leave a bad taste in the Ravens' mouths. And I just don't know. It's going to be a lot of recovery from them there. So there are two sides of setting a tone and being aggressive, where I think the team that sets the tone first is going to have the much, much better chance to win this game, because then you force the other team, depending on how early or late it is in the game, to become one-dimensional by they have to abandon the run game. And we saw the Ravens literally abandon the run game in the fourth quarter of that Cleveland game when they were having so much success. And that is exactly what the Browns wanted for them to do. They wanted to say, hey, the Browns are getting gashed on the ground. We're getting gashed with the Browns. We don't want them to run the ball anymore. They got up by 2 scores, and Greg Roman said, well, now we need to throw the football, which was just not the right decision. So I think moving forward, that won't be an issue. But again, if the Steelers can force the Ravens to throw the ball a bit more, if the run game is having success, you want to eliminate that. And for the Ravens, if you're able to get down the field early, I think that's a big key for them.
Absolutely. And to talk, something that you mentioned earlier, succeeding once you get down into the red zone. The Ravens, like you said, right now, they have the 3rd worst red zone percentage as far as touchdowns. They scored 46.3% on their red zone possessions. The Steelers, a little bit better. They're more in the middle part of the league with 53.3%, ranking 17th. And then on the flip side, it's also 2 of the better red zone defenses in the NFL. The Ravens are only giving up 48% of touchdowns on the red zone possessions they've allowed. The Steelers only 53.4%. The Ravens, that's 4th best. The Steelers 10th best in the NFL right now. I think there's going to be so many things that play into these defenses. I think, it's going to come down to physicality. Who can set that tone? Who can kind of put the other team on their back burners and kind of make them kind of reach to the things that they aren't strong or they don't feel confident in this game. That's what's going to dictate to the end. And if someone kind of wins with that, like say Huntley hits on a deep ball to Deshaun Jackson, or he hits Mark Andrews in a way that catches the Steelers off guard, I think that's what both teams kind of have to live with, right? Like if I'm the Ravens, I'm not letting Najee Harris take over this game. I'm not letting the Steelers running attack. I'm forcing Kenny Pickett to hit a deep ball down the field to Deontay Johnson or George Pickens or one of those guys, because that way I give my pass rush and my secondary a chance to make a play in this game. And if you beat us there, you beat us there. I think that was the biggest mistake the Steelers made, was especially on that last drive when the Ravens just needed to get one last first down. On 3rd down, you didn't see them commit to stopping the run. They came out with a balanced look, and the Ravens got the first down with that way. I think both teams are going to be in a situation where take away the thing that both teams try to do the most, running the football. Make them one-dimensional in passing, and then trust the rest of your defense to make the plays after that.
Yeah, and it's so key, because what you have in the Ravens is a team that knows they can run the football and they can do it effectively. And it feels like their red zone percentage should be so much higher because you have guys like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And Gus Edwards rarely loses yards on his carry, so you just put him in there. But again, these games always come down to the wire. So I'd be shocked if one team like blew the other out of the water in this one, especially with how high stakes it is. I think for both teams, Baltimore's looking to win the North, and they have to, at least to give themselves the best chance, win this game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is trying to fight their way into the playoffs. They definitely need some help to get there, but they have to take care of their own business here. So this is a high leverage game for both teams that I think has huge implications.
The Bills were crowned the team of destiny entering the season, and while there have been a few moments of concern, by and large, Buffalo has checked all the regular season boxes. The division is locked up, but now the focus is keeping their grasp on the number 1 seed and on gaining that critical first-round bye. Meanwhile, the Bengals have everything on the line. With a win, they'll keep the Ravens at bay and also put the push on for the AFC #1 seed. Lose and Cincinnati could potentially find themselves hanging on for dear life to the division lead in Week 18, rather than ensuring rest and health for the playoff run. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills joins James Rapian from Locked On Bengals to break down this AFC battle.
Let's get to some predictions here, guys. Joe, I really just want to take 1 second to appreciate your clear study of what's going on with Lou Anarumo's defense. You came prepared. I'm going to be really interested to see if there is a dedicated effort like we saw from the Patriots last week that we talked about again on the Locked On Bengals film review episode to attack the Cam Taylor-Britt rookie corner, Von Bell, not as rangy as Jesse Bates tandem when the Bengals go split safety. We saw Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne and other speed on the Patriots offense go after this duo on vertical balls. And that's the Patriots offense. Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, a little bit of a different pair there. Kendrick Bourne had a really good game. Not to take anything away from him. It was fantastic. But those guys are pretty proven commodities at the wide receiver position, especially when it comes to vertically challenging the defense. And Josh Allen, arm injury or not, elbow injury or not, I think can challenge you vertically in a way that Mac Jones cannot. So when you talk about the chess match, that's what I'm looking at specifically, because Bill Belichick's offense was not afraid to just throw sideline balls, sideline verticals when the Bengals were middle of field open, and they had Von Bell supposedly playing that deep half. They weren't afraid to try to get behind it. So that will be very interesting, in addition to the trench stuff you talked about where the Bengals are a little banged up without Sam Hubbard. And it's a really good one to point out as well, because Hubbard has been a spy for them a lot this year against some of those more mobile quarterbacks.
I think that's going to be definitely something to monitor in this football game. And I think Cam Taylor-Britt's going to be really good. It's just kind of a tough situation. Yeah, to get thrown into, injured, right, kind of leading into the season. But you see some of the flashes with him. I mean, that guy's a dog, right? Like, you love the physicality, you love the competitive toughness. It's just a matter of kind of settling into a complex defense, right? And it's a big ask of him. But I think in the long term, I think he's going to be a really good player. But right now, he's still a rookie, kind of finding his way. And I'm sure the Bills will be interested in going after that matchup.
It'll be interesting for sure. He's kind of been up and down. Guys, I think we should get to the predictions here. It's a little bit early, right?
Yeah.
We haven't had a first practice yet for the Bengals. The injury report is looking non-existent as we record this crossover Thursday. Instead of 2 injury reports, we have 0. Looks like Hayden Hurst is likely to play this week. Sam Hubbard is now considered day-to-day, not week-to-week, but I think him getting back is a bit of a long shot, even with the extra rest. Trey Hendrickson, I guess he's going to continue to play with a broken wrist. Tyler Boyd going to continue to play with a splint on his left middle finger, I imagine, that comes after some injuries for the dislocation, the open dislocation for him. But Joe, let's start with you again here. Any key players that are going to be out that are going to impact the way or that are going to impact the way you project this game based on how this week goes? You have a feel for how you think this game is going to go?
I think the Bills, they should be relatively healthy coming into this football game in terms of right now. Obviously, they'd love to have Micah Hyde and they'd love to have Von Miller and Jamison Crowder. Those guys ain't going to be available this week. But I think in terms of the last game the Bills played, everybody that started the game finished, but there's always those random injuries that pop up. So I don't know what could come of it. I know the Bills were without Mitch Morse, their starting center, who was in concussion protocol. Ideally, kind of a 2-week rest would give him what he needs to step in and face BJ Hill and DJ Reader. So I think the one that I'm going to be paying the most attention to is Mitch Moore's status coming out of concussion protocol if he's going to be able to go on Monday night.
All right, guys, let's do some predictions. Do we have predictions? Are you ready? I don't do predictions as the resident anti-fun no prediction guy, but James, what do you got?
But you just got to give a disclaimer this early that it's subject to change, and call me. I mean, we're going to do multiple shows. Normally this is our second to last show before the game. We have multiple shows now in a lot of time and multiple practices before this game. I'm leaning Bengals. Look, why would you bet against them? They're at home. They're pretty healthy. Probably no Sam Hubbard. You're right. And the La'el Collins injury. I think, do they lose some power on the ground? Yeah. It's not like La'el Collins was killing it in pass protection. And guess what? They're going to throw the ball against the Bills. That's going to be their goal. And that's what they did last year towards the end of the season. And when you throw it 52 times in Foxborough, I think that's your plan moving forward. So I expect Joe Burrow to throw it early and often. We'll see if Hakeem Adeniji can hold up. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be really close. And Evan McPherson redeems himself. I think it's going to be a field goal game. I'll give an official score later. And heck, maybe I'll flip it if things change. But as of now, I'm thinking really close game. Goes down to the wire. I'll probably have 52 variations of a game story written before it's actually final. But I think the Bengals win a tight one on Monday night.
I certainly don't feel good predicting this game right now.
No, it's tough. It's tough.
So as a disclaimer, let me tell you what I've talked myself into here on this Wednesday afternoon that we record this podcast. Well, first of all, let me just say this. I'm the Locked On Bills guy. You think I'm coming in here and predicting a Bills loss? So, I'm just not going to do it. So let's just keep that in mind as I talk through this narrative that I'm about to give you. I think that there's absolutely a path for Cincinnati to win this football game, but I'm not going to sit here in front of Bills Mafia and the Bengals fans and tell you that I think that the Bengals are going to win, even though I do think that there's a very good chance that they do. The reasons that I'm
Joe, do you get body slammed through a table anytime you pick against the Bills? Once, if not.
I don't pick against the Bills very often, to be honest with you.
I don't blame you.
You know what's
Why
the
would
worst? You know what's one of the worst things is when you do it and you're wrong, and you're like, well, sorry about that.
I did that this year in the Chiefs game. Whew.
Oh man, yeah. Rest in peace, your mentions, right? So this is what I've talked myself into. First of all, this might be a weird talking point, but I think it's a good thing that the Patriots were the last team that the Bengals played. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have a ton of respect for Bill Belichick and what's happening with the Patriots right now. I think he's an absolutely terrible general manager, but he tends to have some pretty good game plans. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially what they do defensively, I think it's going to give you some good clues as to the way to play a team, right? And I think the Bengals, did they score in the second half of that game, right? If I'm not mistaken, they didn't score any points.
They didn't. I'll say this: the offense wasn't as bad as the results. There were some. They had a couple of drop passes that should have been touchdowns. Some fluky plays, so it wasn't quite as bad as it looked.
Right,
but the results weren't there.
But I think you can lean into some of what the Patriots put on tape, understanding that Bill Belichick is a good game planner, and pick off of some of that a little bit. But what we know about both teams is that both offenses are excellent, and to me, that puts the defenses front and center. And when I think about the Bengals on defense, Hubbard and Hendrickson, if they both play, they're going to be hobbled. I think the Bills do have an opportunity here with these corners, Eli Apple and Cam Taylor-Britt, with the weapons that the Bills have at wide receiver. And I think that can give them some good opportunities to score some points. Obviously, the Bills defense, no Von Miller, but their pass rush has been solid without him. But this is kind of that game where you might miss Von Miller a little bit more than you have in recent weeks against some of the other opponents the Bills have had. But maybe that's offset a little bit by Hakeem Adeniji playing right tackle and not La'el Collins. But I think where I really get the most confidence is that I think that the Bills offensively they're a more two-dimensional team. The Bengals 26th in rushing yards per game, 28th in yards per carry. And you could say what you want about the Bills offense running the football and how Josh Allen impacts it. Well, those rushing yards count too, right? And the Bills are statistically a very good rushing offense. I think that two-dimensional attack in a game like this gives them a little bit more to throw at Cincinnati. So we'll see. That would be my reasons for predicting the Bills to win 27-24. But I have a lot of concern about going to Cincinnati and being able to pull off a win, because obviously the Bengals are very, very capable of winning this game themselves.
I think that just kind of highlights, again, some of the matchups that we didn't get to talk about as much and we're out of time for, unfortunately. But the running game in this game for both teams could be very interesting. Like, it's not necessarily a bunch of world beaters on either offensive line and run blocking. DJ Reader is all world in run defense. Trey Hendrickson seems to be playing well enough. Cam Sample last week against the Patriots, and they're also not all world offensive line, was really good in place of Sam Hubbard. And so with BJ Hill playing a little bit better down the stretch, with the linebackers continuing to play pretty well, with the Bengals experience dealing with these playmaking with their legs quarterbacks, that is a really interesting matchup that the Bengals will have to be able to take away. But for me, like you mentioned, Joe, the thing that concerns me the most is the talent of Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. The Bengals haven't faced a duo like this, at least that I can remember this year. You can talk about Tom Brady and Mike Evans perhaps, but they're clearly not there this year. This is a team that has some talent like the Bengals have at the skill positions. And so that is a different challenge for the secondary that is mostly stepped up in Chidobe Awuzie's absence, but again, has another tall task this week. And a lot goes to Joe Burrow in that passing offense for the Bengals. Like we've talked about, we haven't even talked about Joe Mixon. I think this is the first time we've said his name in this episode. Good player. The Bengals haven't been able to run it the last 2 weeks. And is this the game to get it going? I think that they prefer to challenge the Bills with the passing game, like James said. So a lot of interesting stories and matchups in this one to watch. And well, that's why you'll keep it locked on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Go find Joe Marino on Locked On Bills for more coverage from the Bills perspective as we get to this Monday Night Football game. And James and I have you covered on Locked On Bengals, where we will have your updates after a couple days of practice coming your way on Friday and a game preview on Sunday. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Podcast crossover Thursday. Bills, Bengals, Monday Night Football, Week 17, playoff seeding on the line. We appreciate you listening, and make sure you stay tuned where we have you covered every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Well, how many more squads will join the already 8 eliminated teams in the NFL following Week 17? And how many win and in scenarios will be set up for the season finale next week? This is exactly what the NFL is all about, and each and every week, we'll continue to bring you all of the insight and analysis from across the Locked On Network. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I'm Jordan Black, and this has been NFL Key Predictions.